Hey everyone, welcome to Will's Engineering Tips. This is a new channel that I've created basically just to talk about engineering tips and tricks that I've learned along the way. I am still a college student, so I'm learning a lot, and this is just some knowledge that I'd like to share with others and I'd like to learn more. So just a little bit about me to start. My name is William Ash. I am a junior in college at BYU, Idaho. I'm studying for a Bachelor's of Science in Manufacturing Engineering Technology, and I currently work as a manufacturing designer for Quick Quack Car Wash. So if you're in an area that has one of those, any of the equipment that you see when you're driving through, I basically design and make blueprints for all of that for them. I am SolidWorks certified in mechanical design, drawing tools, sustainability, and soon to be simulation. I have a passion for CAD and CAM and just CNC machining, anything mechanical, design related. I love to get my hands on. I just love doing that type of stuff. I also love to mountain bike, play soccer, and watch shows and movies with friends and family. So that's a little bit about me. I'll discuss a little bit about what I'd like to do with this channel and just this video series for the first part. So for this first video series, I'd like to make videos about SolidWorks. It's a 3D modeling program that's widely used in industry and many companies, and it's one of the top leading ones. It is a paid-for program. I'm using the student edition because I am a student, so I get that for free. But there are other CAD and 3D modeling softwares out there that might be free or have trials, so feel free to dabble into those. But as far as these videos go, I will be focusing on SolidWorks as it is widely known and used. I know it can be difficult starting out. I once had to start out in high school, and it can be very confusing at first, so I'd like to take this time to give you some of the tips that I've learned along the way that would have helped me learn it much quicker and become much more proficient and fast at it. So some of the videos I like to make is, just a general overview, making parts, how to make something 3D in the program, right? The point of it. As well as taking those parts and making an assembly. So an assembly is, multiple parts put together to make one big component, right? And then making a drawing. So basically taking assemblies or parts and putting it into a blueprint that you can give to a manufacturer to have made. Take something, an idea that you have, put it in a computer, and then turn that into something physical that can be used. As well as going over a little bit of sheet metal that SolidWorks has, some weldments, basically common industry standards and materials that might be used in fabrication. Going over a little bit of simulation later. This would go into your finite element analysis, studying stress and strain and the behavior of metal and how it deforms when forces are put on it, things like that, as well as a little bit of CAM work, so getting into more of the machining side. I'm still relatively new with the whole simulation and CAM stuff, but I think I have enough knowledge to kind of give some basic tutorials about that, as well as learn more from you guys from your comments and helpful tips. So CAM, making tool paths, programming a machine to take your 3D model and turn it into something physical. And then lastly, talking just a little bit about sustainability, just how to become more environmentally friendly and reduce the environmental impact we have based on the materials that we use, the processes that we use to make parts, and then how those parts are used. So if that sounds something interesting, stay tuned, and I'd love to help you guys out. So with that being said, let's just jump right into some SolidWorks. So when you open up SolidWorks, I'm running SolidWorks 2020. Typically the years don't change a ton. There might be some new features or a new looking layout. But overall, if you have a previous version or even a newer version, most of the stuff that I'll be talking about is still the same. I can explain some differences that I know of, but if not, just shoot me a comment or an email if you have any specific questions related to that. So when you get into SolidWorks, you'll most likely see this screen that I first started out with, and it gives you some options here. You can make a part, an assembly, or a drawing. There's a couple different types of documents. They give you a brief description down at the bottom, and then there is an advanced tab. The advanced tab is just for different templates that you can make to start things faster. So if I wanted to make a part and I wanted to use edges as my dimensions, I can just click on that right there, and I don't have to set all that up manually. It's just a faster way, but since we're assuming beginners or little knowledge, we'll go ahead and start out with a basic part. So we'll just go ahead and click on part. You can either double click it or just click it and press OK, and then SolidWorks will load in with everything here. So first I'd like to give just a brief rundown of what you're seeing, what's going on. I know it can look intimidating. You kind of just have this big white space and then just a ton of buttons and names and I remember my first time seeing it, I was, reading some of these things like, what does extruded boss mean? Or what, reference geometry. There was so much going on and I didn't know what to do or how to mess with stuff. And so I think it's good just to get a rundown of how things are. And so this video is mostly just going to be about that, about what to do, what to look for, what some of the things mean, related to that. So one of the first things that I like to do when I start a new part is I like to make sure my dimensions are set to what I want and that my material is selected to what I want. If I know that I'm making something out of aluminum, I can just set that in the beginning, that way it's there. If material doesn't matter to you, you kind of just want to throw some ideas around and get a feel, you can always add a material later, that's fine. But I like to do it in the beginning just because if I like to do a simulation on it, sometimes it's easy to forget, or if I go to machine something, it's very easy to forget to set your material until afterwards. So if I just go up here to the top bar, you'll see a little options icon. You can go ahead and click on that and it'll bring up system options. Now there's some differences between system options and document properties. Your system options are going to apply to everything. So this is, as the name implies, the whole system. So this would be, your general, your performance, how the computer runs, based on your drawings. This is how your performance works over the whole system, as it mentions. And then if we go over here to document properties, this is what actually applies to this document that I'm working with right now. So this part, these are some of the settings that I have. So I have, my dimensions here, I'm in ANSI, detailing, and one of the things that I like to go to is my units. And so my units here, you can see they have a unit system. I typically in America, depends on what I'm working with, but we use inches, so we'll be using ANSI inch. So that's inch, pounds, and seconds. So I just go ahead and click that, and then you can change a little bit of the settings here. Say you want to show your length dimensions in decimal forms, but you want it greater than 2 dimensions of accuracy. So you can show 3 or more, it doesn't really matter. And then like it showed me there, it changed my drafting standard to ANSI modified because I had changed it from the original ANSI. So if I change it back to ANSI, you can see that my units typically are here. I usually just leave it as default. If I need to show more, I can come back and change that. But as far as that, I'll just put it as inch, pound, seconds. Some of the other things that I have on that you might notice, for example, would be under detailing. I have shaded cosmetic threads turned off, as well as regular cosmetic threads turned on. You'll see that later once I get into threads and how those look and making some different types of holes. There's also some other options you could play around with. I haven't messed with them too much. For the most part, I just keep it as default. The only other things I've changed would be maybe in their performance. I would definitely recommend unchecking the use software OpenGL if that's even available for you. And then if you're running a little bit slow, you can uncheck the enhanced graphic performance, which does require a SolidWorks restart. It all just depends on your computer, the capabilities that it has. Mine isn't any fancy drafting CAD modeling computer. I just have a regular, RTX NVIDIA 2060 graphics card. So it does what I need it to do. Under display here, some other settings you might want to change. So hidden edges I have displayed as dashed. I'll explain more what those mean later. Tangent edge display I have removed. And so I'll show you a little bit. You might notice that when I'm talking about it, and I'll make sure to mention it as well. But those I keep removed just because it makes it a little bit easier to see. This is a personal preference. You can play with these settings later or even look some of them up. I don't even fully know what they all mean, but that's just to get started. So this is your option settings. So after that, I like to, like I mentioned, set my material. So over here, on your left side of the screen, this is a movable tab that can be collapsed and opened. I typically just leave it opened where you can see all these tabs. There's little arrows if you need to go over. This is called your feature manager tree, or you could just call it the feature tree, right? And so over here, it'll display all the features that you do, sketches, things like that. So I can see where my origin is, I can see a right, top, and a front plane, but you'll notice here I can also specify a material. So if I go ahead and right click on this, I can click on Edit Material. And then SolidWorks has built in a list of typical materials that you might find or be able to use. So for this example, I will just be using plain carbon steel, and then it'll give you some of the elastic modulus, if you know a little bit about strength of materials, Poisson's ratio, shear modulus, things like that, that you can use for calculating the mass of a part, or later used in simulation data to figure out, the stress in a certain area. But in order to select the material, you can just click on one. So I'm going to click on plain carbon steel, click apply, and then click close. So now our material's set. You can see it over there, plain carbon steel. So from here, you're ready to begin creating something. Before we do that though, I would just like to mention this little top bar up here. So this is what we do to change our views. So it's called the view bar, like the view orientation or the view toolbar. And so this is basically the one that I use the most is the view orientation. So if I click a box on that, you can kind of see that this little box comes up, right? And so whatever I make is basically going to be inside this 3D box. And you can imagine that if I were to click on a face, that's how I would be looking through this box at whatever I'm making. It'll be easier to see once we actually start making something, but this is a helpful window to use. Another quick tip is with your keyboard, you can actually press the space bar and it'll bring up a little portable window and it'll pop up that square for you. So rather than moving your mouse to the top all the time, depending on what you're doing, you can just press the space bar, go over to where it's at, click on the view you want, and then you're set. Typically, I just keep it in an isometric view, which is like a classic 3D view from this point right here. So from there, you want to be in the Sketch tab. In order to start making things, we have to make a 2D sketch that we turn into something 3D, and we can add off of that later. So from Sketch, I can go ahead and just click this right here, Sketch. It'll create a new sketch. Then what it's going to ask me to do is I have to select a plane or a face that I want to create the sketch on. So this will determine how my sketch is viewed. So as you can see here, this is the front plane. It's outlined in orange, the top plane, and the right plane. You have to be able to think a little bit three-dimensionally. Another helpful tool is if you hold down your middle mouse button, if you click it, and then you move your mouse, you can rotate. And so this is helpful if you want to look at your part from different views, because I can rotate. Now I'm looking at the right plane. Now I'm looking at the front plane, and if I rotate it down, now I'm looking at the top plane. So this is helpful to get a view for your parts and rotate it and move it around. Your scroll wheel works the same. If I, it's a little bit different in SolidWorks. If I scroll up, I zoom out, and if I scroll down, I zoom in, and it zooms in to wherever my mouse is. So if I'm over here and I zoom out, so I scroll up, it'll zoom out from that point. And then I can zoom in over here, which will zoom me into wherever my mouse is. So wherever my mouse is pointed, that's where it'll zoom me in and zoom me out from. Takes a little bit getting used to, but it should be pretty simple. Go ahead and press the space bar, come over here to isometric, click that, now we're back to where we want. So again, we're going to choose where we want to place the sketch. I'm going to go ahead and choose the front plane to place my sketch. So we'll just go click on the front plane, and it'll move it to the front plane. If it doesn't automatically change your orientation, you can go up here to the top, click on View Orientation, and then this little symbol right here means normal to. So this is going to make it perpendicular or normal to the face that I'm sketching on or that I want to look at. So if I click that, it'll face me to where I'm facing the front. Also, if you just want to face the front, there's this little view here. You got the top, bottom, left, right, back, and front. So I can just click on the front, and then it takes me to the front. And this shows where my origin is. Down here as well, you can see a 3D view of the origin. So I can see if I rotate my screen a little bit, I have X going off in the right, Y going up, and Z coming out of the page. So I'm just going to go ahead and look from the front view here, and we can see that I have X going to the right and Y going up, with this little dot being my origin. If you hover over it, it'll automatically select for me. And you can see in our feature tree over here on the left that it has created a new sketch. And from there, we can use the various sketch tools that we have. These are pretty basic. I have a line, a circle, a rectangle, an ellipse, a polygon, a fillet. I can make a point, some text. I can add a plane later. It's a little bit more advanced we'll talk about. And then there's some other advanced sketch tools that I'll talk about in a future video. But for now, let's go ahead and make a rectangle. You'll notice there's a drop down arrow as well, which shows you all the different types of rectangles you can make. I can make a regular corner rectangle, a center rectangle, which makes a rectangle based off of a center point, a 3-point corner rectangle, a 3-point center rectangle, or a parallelogram. So I'm just going to go ahead and choose a corner rectangle, and then I need to choose where I want to start it. So for this example, let's go ahead and make it from this point. So I'm going to go ahead and click once, and then I drag out and I click again, and it places my square. I'm going to rezoom to fit it. Also, you can click this button up here, zoom to fit. If you click that, it'll just zoom in on whatever part you're working on, excuse me, sorry, in order to fully view your sketch. After that, you can see that I can now place another square if I wanted to, but I'm going to go ahead and click escape. You can also click the check up here. I typically just keep my fingers on the keyboard, so escape is just fastest for me. Sorry. After that, you can see, one of the things that I'd like to mention is that you can see that the lines are black and blue. And so there's these little green icons, and there's a lot of stuff maybe going on that you might not be familiar with. So a black line in SolidWorks means that it is fully defined. So basically the position of this line is fixed based on geometry that I set. So basically, if I try to move this line left or right, it can't go anywhere. If I try to move it up or down, it can't go anywhere. And same for this line. But this line, on the other hand, if I grab it, I can move it up and down. And I can move it around. And this line as well, I can move it in or out because I haven't defined how long it is. I haven't said anything about it. Now these little green icons are what's known as sketch constraints. So basically, when you constrain something, you limit its movement, or you tell it to do a certain thing, and that's what it does. It can't do anything else besides that. So basically, this means coincident. So a coincident mate means that this point is merged with this origin point, so it can't move. It'll show you as well. If I try to drag it, SolidWorks tells me, cannot drag, the selected item is fixed. And then this means horizontal, as you can tell, a horizontal line, and this means vertical. So this basically makes my line always stay horizontal. No matter what I do, no matter where I try to move it, if I try to move it left and right, it won't, but it will let me move it up and down because it stays vertical, and this one stays horizontal. So those are some of the constraints. We'll get into more of them later. As you can tell, if I click on a line, you get this little bar comes up. There's more constraints and options up here that we can work with, but we're not going to focus on that right now. Let's go ahead and focus on one very easy constraint. Let's say I want to make a perfect square. Now there's a couple ways that you can do this. One is a little bit faster that I've learned over time, and constraints have become one of my best friends. Or if you want to take a little bit more time, no harm done, it'll get the same result, and that's using the dimensioner. So one of the ways you can do it is you can just click on the line, and over here under parameters I can specify a length. So let's say I want to make that 3 inches. I go ahead and hit 3, enter. And so now this line is 3 inches. Well, the thing is though, I can still change that because it's not set, it's not defined. I just set it to a value, but then say I accidentally move that, well now it's changed and I don't want that. So I want to make that permanent. So one of the ways I can do that is I go up here, what's called Smart Dimension. And Smart Dimension, if I click on that, allows me to create dimensions or measurements for certain pieces that I want. So a couple ways that I can place this dimension. Let's say I want to dimension this line. I can either click on it and then drag out my dimension and click again to place it, and then I can place a value. I want 3 inches. Now if I hit enter, it placed a value of 3 inches, and it tells me from this point to that point is 3 inches. And now you'll notice that this top line is now blacked out because I can't move that anymore because I specified that this length is 3 inches, which locks this in place. But this one's still blue because it doesn't have a length right here. So let's say I want to make that 3 inches as well. Well, the way I can do that is I can click Smart Dimension again, and I can either click this line, or you can click from one line and it wants to give me a dimension of 3 inches, but if I click on another line, it'll give me a dimension between those two. So you can either click on this bottom line, or between one line and the other line, it'll give you dimension between it. So let's go ahead and make that 3 inches as well, hit enter, and there we have a perfect square. We know that this is 3 inches, these are both equal to each other, these are both equal to each other. If I press escape, I go ahead and get out of the dimension tool. But let's say that I didn't want to place, dimensions for every little thing. One of the things I could do is delete that, and I'll delete these dimensions. So if you just, click on it, press delete, it goes away. And now I can move it again however I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select any two of these opposing lines. and I'm going to make them equal to each other. It wouldn't make sense to make this one and this one equal to each other because they're already equal, whereas this one will change though. So I'm going to go ahead and select a vertical line and a horizontal line so I'm going to click, press Control, and click on another line. Then if I let go of Control, a little window pops up here. It also is on the left. And I can choose a relation or a constraint. So for this one, I'm going to choose equal. And what that did, you can see a little equal sign popped up. It made those two lines equal to each other, which in turn makes these two lines equal. So now you'll notice that when I grab and drag, it changes the size of the whole square because these are all now equal to each other. So now I can go ahead and place one dimension at 3 inches and it automatically changes the other one to 3 inches for me. So it's just a very quick way of being able to define a sketch easily and accurately, and you don't have to worry about it. And then once my sketch goes fully black, it'll say down here, fully defined. That means that no matter what I do, can't drag it, can't move anything around. And there we have a sketch of a square. And so this video is gone on a little bit too long, just because I wanted to explain a little bit more about it, just get to the basics of SolidWorks, do a little bit. I'll go ahead and make more future videos going more in depth, how to make this 3D, how to do more advanced sketches, all these toolbars and add-ins and features that SolidWorks has. It's just immense. There's so much to it. I still don't know everything, and I'm sure that there is a ton more for me to learn. If you found this helpful, go ahead and leave a like. Feel free to subscribe to the channel. There will be more like this. Post a comment down below. Let me know some of your thoughts, some of your encouragements, tips, tricks, any things like that. Thank you guys for watching this video. I hope this has been helpful. This is Will's Engineering Tips, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.